We've got a little bit of everything in 14.3 with a ton of champion buffs, lots of nerfs to OP champs, and over 12 items being adjusted. In today's video, we'll be breaking it all down and providing you guys with a complete update on the solo queue tier list for every single role, thanks to the help of our challenger players and analyzing the most recent data. Also, we're excited to announce we've done a massive update, adding all brand new courses for Season 14 on our website, SkillCapped.com. And if that's not enough, we upload 10 new Smurf commentaries every week where a challenger teaches you how to play every champion in the exact rank you're stuck in. The best part? You can try all this out completely risk-free. If you don't rank up while actively using SkillCapped, you get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted in Season 14. Let's start off by covering all the item changes, and first up, we have some buffs to Rageblade. AD and AP on the item are both being increased by 5, and the build path is being swapped around as well. Definitely watch out for Vayne this patch, as she's a Rageblade user who has already been performing pretty well in 14.2. A few other champions who will benefit from this buff include Kalista, Kog'Maw, Master Yi, Kai'Sa, and Varus. Essence Reaver has become one of the more niche items in the game, so Riot's looking to buff it up for 14.3. AD on the item is being increased from 55 to 60. Gangplank, Ezreal, and Smolder are the 3 champions who are building ER more than anyone else right now, so they'll benefit the most from this buff. With the Collector and Ghostblade nerfed for this patch, we may see ER priority rise back up on Draven as well. A few buffs are being issued to Luden's Companion, with its AP increased from 90 to 95. Cost is being lowered from 3,000 to 2,900 gold, while the passive base damage per stack is up while the scaling damage is down. So many of the weakest mages from 14.2 have been Luden's users, like Syndra, Orianna, and Zoe, so they'll be getting a much needed boost from these buffs. A bit of a power shift going on for Malignants, as Riot will be reducing the cost of the item from 2,800 to 2,700 gold. However, they're nerfing the damage over time AP ratio from 6 to 5%. Magic Resist Shred is being altered as well, going from 6 scaling to 12 to just a flat 10 at all levels. Some Archangels and Rod of Ages buffs are on the way, as the cost of Archangels is going to be lowered from 3,000 to 2,900 gold. As for Rod of Ages, Riot will be increasing the health on the item from 350 to 400, while the mana is going up from 300 to 400. Champions that can build both Rod of Ages and Archangels will see a nice boost for 14.3, and some of those notables include Anivia, Cassiopeia, Ryze, and Kassadin. Moving on to the items nerfs now, we have the Collector being hit, as the AD on the item is going down from 60 to 55. ADCs like Samira and Neela, who have been rushing the Collector in recent patches, will be hurt the most by this change. Kaenic Rookern will be hit with its first much-deserved nerf of Season 14. There's actually 2 separate changes, as Riot will be reducing the shield max health ratio from 20 to 18%. Shield cooldown is nerfed as well, going from 12 to 15 seconds. Kaenic should still remain a great pickup in games where you're trying to hard counter heavy magic damage, as we don't see these nerfs killing the item by any means. There are a few nerfs to Ghostblade planned for this patch, but the changes will only affect ranged champions. Out of combat movement speed is down from 40 to 25. Active movement speed has been lowered as well from 20 to 15%. Senna, Jace, Misfortune, Graves, and Jhin are 5 champions who will be feeling this nerf the most. A bunch of items will have their proc damage reduced in 14.2, as Lichbane, Hextech Alternator, Rocket Belt, Echoes of Helia, Static Shiv, Stormrazor, Profane Hydra, and Titanic Hydra will all be dealing less damage. Even though the damage proc on Static Shiv is being reduced, Riot will be compensating the item with a buff, as the cost is going down from 3,000 to 2,700 gold. AD Twisted Fate has actually been really liking Shiv, so it will be interesting to see how these changes affect him. It's hard to say whether the cost reduction will outweigh the damage proc going down, but overall, Riot intends for this to be a power-neutral change. Sundered Sky is the next item being adjusted for this patch, with the damage being lowered. However, the health on the item is going up. Gold efficiency-wise, this is a pretty neutral change, so we don't see it heavily affecting the champions who have been building the item. If you've been running Sundered Sky in previous patches, then it will remain a good pickup in 14.3. And to round out all the item changes, we have the biggest change of them all, as Stridebreaker will be getting a pretty massive overhaul. Build path is going to be changed, as Phage is no longer a component, and taking its place will be Tiamat. Cost of Stridebreaker is going up from 3,000 to 3,300 gold. Health is being increased from 400 to 450. AD is down from 55 to 50. Active cooldown is being reduced from 20 to 15 seconds, while the active will now have its damage back, as it's given an 80% AD ratio. So whether this change turns out net positive solely rests on how impactful the change to the active is. From the stats alone, cost going up by 300 is not worth gaining 50 health and losing 5 AD, so where the value is being made up is in the active. The fact it's taken this long to see Trundle nerfs is kinda crazy, but we've got some coming for 14.3 as Riot has 2 nerfs lined up. Base health of Trundle is being reduced from 686 to 650. Q base damage is going down as well by 10 at all ranks. So some nerfs that solely target Trundle's early laning power but don't really affect his mid to late game split push. Definitely nerfs that will hurt the champion and he'll no longer be OP, but with the split strength of the champ still intact, we still believe Trundle will be a really great top lane pick for the lower ranks especially. For the tier list placement, we'll be shifting Trundle from OP into S tier. Riot has a plethora of changes planned for Yorick, so let's have a look. Q mana cost is going down. Q heal is no longer doubled when below 50% health. However, Q will now heal for 4, scaling to 8% missing health. Q healing is going to be reduced by 50% against minions and monsters. E cast time is buffed, going from 0.33 to 0.25 seconds. R mark damage is being reduced. However, R mark proc cooldown is being removed. It's really anyone's guess as to how impactful these changes will turn out, as there's just so much going on here. We're not going to jump the gun and preemptively move Yorick up the tier list until we see how these changes shape out on live servers, so he'll remain in the C tier for now, and we'll provide you guys with a more accurate rating for our mid-patch tier list update. These Illaoi changes are looking absolutely incredible and should give her so much more viability for 14.3. Illaoi's tentacle range is being increased, and if you take a look at the background gameplay, you'll see just how insane these changes are. In this 14.2 clip, you can see how that if the enemy was standing in the middle of the lane, you wouldn't actually be able to hit them with your tentacles when using W. Now in 14.3, since the range on Illaoi's tentacles have been increased, you can hit the enemy even if they're standing in the middle of lane. This will just add so much more consistent strength to Illaoi's trading pattern in lane. Now, with such a big buff like this, there are some compensation nerfs as well as the base damage on Illaoi's tentacles are going down a bit, and the tentacle AD ratio is dropping as well. All in all, we expect these changes to be net positive for Illaoi, and we'll be giving her an added push up the tier list, moving her from A into S tier. The upper echelon of the top lane sees a bit of retooling for 14.3 as a result of Trundle leaving the OP tier. 3 champions will now lock down OP tier spots, as we've got Aatrox, Malphite, and Zac. Aatrox has been by far the most popular top lane champ in recent patches, and for good reason, as he's a powerhouse solo carry in Season 14, synergizing really nicely with the new item Sundered Sky. Zac in the OP tier is probably a shock to many, however, recent indirect changes have been huge for him, and he's started to gain a lot more attention in the top lane. With more health being added in runes for 14.2, it's perfect for Zac, as he has a mass amount of health scaling in his kit. The new magic resist items that were added for Season 14 make Zac an incredible answer to magic damage comps. Being able to run Hollow Radiance instead of Sunfire Aegis and then build into Spirit Visage second makes Zac unkillable against AP heavy comps. At the very start of the season, we saw a lot of AP top laners dominating and played at pretty high rates, so it indirectly shifted Malphite's priority down. However, AP tops are now being played way less due to many of them being nerfed, and it's given rise back to Malphite as one of the most consistently powerful top lane picks. We'll be taking a look at the Wukong changes in just a moment when we cover the jungle changes. However, the buffs will positively affect top lane Wukong as well, so we're moving him up the tier list. 8 junglers are being changed for 14.3, and first up we have Nidalee. Nidalee will have her magic resist growth increased, going from 1.3 to 1.45. E will receive 3 separate buffs, with the base heal going up, heal AP ratio going up as well, and E attack speed will be getting a nice boost. For the higher elos, Nidalee could make a push back into meta as a decent jungler, but for the majority of elos, we don't see these changes moving the needle enough, so we'll be leaving her in the B tier for now. AP Shyvana has been an absolutely terrible pick to start Season 14, so Riot's trying to help her out a little. Q attack speed ratio is going to be increased by 10% at all ranks. Q first hit AP ratio is up from 35 to 50%. W movement speed AP ratio is going up from 80 to 120%. A bruiser style of Shyvana with Titanic Hydra and Sundered Sky has been performing way better than AP so far this season, and we don't see that priority shifting as a result of these buffs. If you really want to play Shyvana right now, definitely try out this bruiser build on her, as it's performing quite well. We definitely think Shyvana is a little bit better than her overall win rate of 46% may suggest right now, so with these buffs factored in too, we'll be pushing her out of the jungle basement, going from C into B tier. Taliyah is getting a really simple but extremely effective buff for 14.3, as Riot will be increasing her Q damage by 10 at rank 1. Nice buff to help with Taliyah's early clear and give her a bit more added skirmish power and kill threat when looking for ganks. E cooldown is being buffed as well, going from 16 scaling to 14 seconds to just 14 flat at all ranks. Talia has been hovering just below an A tier position in recent patches, so with these buffs, we'll be bumping her from B into A. A couple of Wukong buffs are penciled in this patch, with his Q buffed in two separate ways. Q bonus range is going up from 75 to 175 to 135, scaling to 175. So the exact same at max rank, but way higher at rank 1, which will give Wukong some added skirmish power early on. Buff honestly helps the trading power of top lane Wukong more than it will for jungle though. Next buff is a scaling change to Wukong's Q bonus AD ratio, going from 45 to 55%. E cooldown is the final buff, as it's being reduced to the later ranks only, going from 10 scaling to 8 seconds to 10 scaling to 7 seconds. Likely not quite enough to actually bring Wukong back into meta as a highly competitive pick, but we'll be moving him out of the C tier and into B due to the changes. So with those jungle buffs out of the way, let's have a look at the champions being nerfed. No surprise to see Brand on the nerf list, as he's held upwards of a 54% win rate in 14.2. To try and combat this, Riot will be reducing Brand's passive monster damage from 220 to 200%. On top of this, Q base damage will be lowered by 10 at all ranks. These changes really shouldn't be the end of the line for Brand jungle, as we still expect him to remain a competitive pick, so we'll only be adjusting him from OP down into S tier. Competing with Brand throughout 14.2 for the title of the most OP jungler was Lilia, so she'll be nerfed this patch too. Passive damage AP ratio is dropping from 1.5% max health to 1.25% max health. Q AP ratio is down as well from 45 to 35%. So more of a scaling nerf here to Lilia, but considering that's really where she's thrived in recent patches, the changes will definitely hurt. Since you're able to proc passive damage so consistently throughout an extended fight, the nerf will definitely add up over time. Just like Brand, Lilia will be removed from the OP tier in 14.3 and pushed down into S. Rengar nerfs will be dropping this patch, with his early game and scaling strength both being targeted. Base health is dropping from 620 to 590. QAD ratio is being lowered, but at the later ranks only. Empowered QAD ratio will be reduced from 140 to 130%. Deserved nerfs for how much Rengar has been excelling in recent patches, and as a result, we will be moving him from S into A tier. We have a few Shaco changes that are skewed more positively towards jungle instead of support. Mana growth is being reduced from 0.45 to 0.35. W mana cost is going down, but the later ranks only. W damage to monsters is up by a significant margin, being increased by 10 at rank 1 and by 30 at max rank. E mana cost will be increased, going from 65 to 75. So the biggest takeaway from these changes are that Shaco's early clear will become a bit faster in 14.3. Will that really be enough to bring him back into meta though? Most likely not, so we'll be leaving him in the jungle B tier for now. So if we have a look at the jungle tier list, with Brand and Lilia both hit with nerfs, we'll see priority shift a bit for this patch, as Briar and Nocturne will be taking over the OP tier slots. Remember, Ghostblade nerfs only affect ranged champions, so Briar is safe from that one. The Collector nerf will hurt her a little, but even though lethality builds are most popular on Briar right now, it's Bruiser that's becoming better, so she really shouldn't be affected by the 14.3 changes. Nocturne has continued to assert his dominance in Season 14 and is an exceptionally strong champion right now, being able to abuse the Hexblade Rush to its fullest potential. Trundle and Maokai are both being nerfed due to their excellent standing in other roles, but those nerfs will negatively affect them in the jungle as well, which is why they're being moved down the tier list. Much lighter of a patch for mid lane compared to jungle, as there are just 3 mid laners being adjusted. Azir is first up, and as far as we know at the time of making this video, Riot just has 1 nerf in the pipeline. There may be another though, so just watch out for the patch notes. Base mana regen will be dropping from 7 to 5. The Lichbane changes are honestly the ones that will be more influential in shifting Azir's power. He's been liking Lichbane as a second purchase in recent patches, but with the damage proc nerf, it's going to make his mid game slightly weaker. We'll be leaving Azir in the mid lane A tier for the time being, but we may need to shift him lower for the mid patch update depending on how the Lichbane nerfs pan out. Aurelion Sol will be getting a pretty big power shift for 14.3, as a lot of his strength is being moved off of E and onto Q. Q star dust stacks per champion are going up from 1 to 3. Q mana cost is dropping from 45 to 30. W mana cost is being lowered as well, and the cooldown on W is getting a buff too. Percent Q damage increase while flying with W is going up. E change is the only nerf, as the amount of star dust stacks per unit that dies inside of E are being lowered. So basically, you're now going to be rewarded much more for being proactive in lane with Aurelion Sol, looking for constant poke with Q instead of just brainlessly spamming E out on the wave and stacking star dust that way. This should lead to a more fun and healthy playstyle for the champion and be net positive in the long run. It's really going to depend on the matchup though as to whether these changes are heavy buffs or more power neutral. Into melee matchups where you can spam out Q consistently, we see these changes being positive, but in ranged matchups where you really can't use Q at all early on, you're probably going to end up scaling a bit slower due to Stardust from E being harder to come by. It's hard to say exactly how much win rate Aurelion Sol will gain or lose from these changes, so we're not going to be moving him anywhere right now, and he'll remain in the S tier for 14.3. Despite Corki being a weaker performing champion in solo queue, he's seeing play in the pro scene again, which means Riot has to pay more attention to him. A few changes are being issued for this patch, and most notably, Corki's passive duration is being lowered from 60 to 45 seconds. This is a pretty big hit, and will drastically reduce the window in which you can find catch plays with package. A couple buffs to W are being issued to compensate, but they're pretty negligible. W cooldown is being reduced, but at the later ranks only. W mana cost is going down from 100 to 80. Considering W is not an ability that you spam out off cooldown in lane, the mana cost reduction doesn't really matter that much. W cooldown buff means very little as well, since you max the spell out last and won't get full benefit from that buff until level 18. We honestly think Corki becomes weaker due to these changes, with the passive nerf outweighing the W buffs, so we'll be moving Corki into the mid lane C tier for 14.3. We have a couple of adjustments to discuss for the mid lane tier list in 14.3, as the OP tier will be seeing a shakeup. Twisted Fate will remain on top, as we moved him up during our 14.2 mid-patch update. However, he's now going to be joined by Anivia and Cassiopeia. Buffs to Archangels and Rod of Ages indirectly benefit Anivia and Cassio, and they've already been performing very well in recent patches, so we think these item buffs will push them over the top. We covered the Talia changes when going over jungle, and they'll be quite positive for mid lane Talia as well, so she's getting a push into S tier. Karma mid will become significantly weaker this patch due to the RQ AP ratio nerf, so we're bumping her down into the mid lane B tier. There are just 2 ADCs in line for changes for this patch, and we have a few buffs to Zeri. Base AD is going from 53 to 56. Our cooldown is buffed, but at the earlier ranks, only going from 100 to 80 seconds at rank 1. Considering Zeri has been the lowest win rate ADC in 14.2, these buffs are definitely needed, but they don't seem big enough to actually push her into the upper echelon. We'll be giving Zeri a small push up the tier list, going from C into B tier. Ezreal ballooned into holding the highest play rate for any champion in the game during 14.2, so Riot is looking to pull back a bit in 14.3. QAD ratio is being lowered from 135 to 130%. Remember, Essence Reaver is being buffed this patch though, so you can actually see from the comparison clips that there is not a difference in Ezreal Q damage when you have Essence Reaver completed. Our damage is going down for sure though, as the base damage and bonus AD ratio will be dropping. When you factor in those Essence Reaver buffs, these nerfs should not end up hitting all too hard, as we're going to be leaving Ezreal in the ADC A tier. Riot's looking to bring some life back to Ziggs bot lane for this patch, as they're buffing his armor. Base armor is going from 18 to 21, while armor growth is being increased from 4.5 to 4.7. W cooldown will be getting a nice buff as well, going from 24 to 20 seconds at rank 1. Considering you max W out last on Ziggs, this is quite a nice change. Ziggs should be back in a pretty good spot for solo queue, and we'll be moving him from B to A tier as a result. It's mainly the indirect changes to items that will influence the ADC meta in 14.3, so let's have a look at the adjustments we've made to the tier list. OP tier is no longer locked down by just misfortune, as Vayne will be moving up and joining her. Vayne benefits from the Rage Blade and Essence Reaver buffs this patch, as her on-hit build has her building Rage Blade, while her burst build revolves around Essence Reaver. If you're looking to spice up your ADC champion pool, ADC Twisted Fate is actually a legitimate pick now. He's been performing really well with an energized build of Static Shiv, Storm Razor, and Fire Cannon, and you'll find him placed in the ADC A tier. Varus and Kalista are both being bumped up a tier due to the Rage Blade buffs, while Samira and Aphelios are going to be moved down as a result of the Collector nerf. Samira is one ADC who's solely been running the Collector as her rush item, so the nerf will hurt her the most. Smolder has now made his way to live servers, and despite his low win rate, he's looking like a pretty strong champion. Essence Reaver buffs this patch will give Smolder a nice indirect boost, and as more players begin to understand his kit, the win rate should steadily rise. As we predicted in our Smolder starter guide, the champion is seeing much better success in the lower ranks due to his scaling power. Pyke has fallen behind the pack in recent patches, so Riot's looking to bring him back for 14.3. Base armor is going up from 45 to 47. Q mana cost is being lowered from 74 to 70 at rank 1. E damage is down at rank 1, however it's being buffed at the later ranks. W movement speed is being increased with the base value and lethality scaling going up. These buffs should do the trick to bring Pyke back into parity with many of the other good solo queue supports, so we're shifting him from B into A tier. As a result of her 14.2 buffs, Karma's play rate spiked super hard, so a few nerfs are lined up for 14.3. RQ base damage is going down, and RQ AP ratio will be taking a hit as well, going from 70 to 50%. This change definitely hurts mid lane Karma more than it does support. However, support Karma will still be negatively influenced, and we'll be moving her from A into B tier. Some much needed Maokai nerfs are being issued issued as the champion had an astounding 55% win rate throughout 14.2. Base mana is going down from 7.2 to 6. Passive base heal is being removed, while the max health heal is going up, but at the later levels only. Q cooldown is being lowered at rank 1, while mana cost on Q is down from 60 to 40. E cooldown is being changed from 14 seconds flat to 16, scaling to 12 seconds. E mana cost is nerfed early on, but buffed when fully maxed out. R cooldown is the final change, with the spell being increased by 10 seconds at all ranks. All in all, these changes don't seem that bad considering how broken Maokai has been. Early game strength is definitely down, but mid to late game power of Maokai doesn't really get affected that badly. E is actually now stronger when fully maxed out, so we may see a poke style of Maokai support come back instead of full tank. Even if Maokai were to lose up to 5% off his win rate from these changes, he would still be a viable support champion, and we'd be surprised if these nerfs hit that bad. So for now, we're only going to be shifting him from OP tier and into S. The final champion being changed in 14.3 is Zyra, as we have 4 unique adjustments. Base mana regen is being reduced, going from 13 to 7. Mana regen growth is up from 0.4 to 0.8. Q mana cost is down from 70 to 55. W's small unit cooldown refund is being increased from 20 to 35%. Whether these changes positively or negatively affect Zyra is hard to say. However, whichever way they go, we don't expect a very big power shift overall, and Zyra will be placed in the support S tier. The overall theme of the support meta won't be changing very much for 14.3. OP tier will be locked down by 2 champions, as we have Bard and Janna on top. Bard has been an insanely powerful carry in recent patches, and even though the Kanik Rookern nerfs hurt him a little for 14.3, his power is not 100% dependent on that build, so we expect him to continue dominating. In a meta where engage is king, Janna fits in really nicely right now, as her disengage power hard counters so many highly picked champions. The meta continues to favor supports that have strong setup, as other than Janna, there aren't any enchanters that really stand out right now. With so much early game focus being around bot lane in Season 14, picking someone like Yuumi or Lulu is just not of great value since they struggle quite a bit in those early skirmishes. If you truly want to improve and rank up fast, head on over to SkillCapped.com. We just finished a massive update adding all brand new courses for Season 14. We even upload 10 new Smurf commentaries each week where a challenger teaches you how to play every champion in the exact rank you're stuck in. And remember, you can try all this out risk-free. If you don't rank up while actively using SkillCapped, you get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description below to get the rank you've always wanted this season. So that's going to wrap everything up for our 14.3 edition of the Solo Queue tier list. Thank you all so much for watching, good luck in Solo Queue, and we'll see you back soon.